Hi, my name is Jonathan from Meerkat, and today we are sitting down with the CEO and founder of Meerkat, Mr. David O'Brien, and we will be covering a very important topic which goes around retirement and savings. Hi, Mr. O'Brien, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you. Thanks very much, Jonathan.
Mr. O'Brien, recently we have discovered that there is something called a two-pot retirement in South Africa. How would that affect South Africans?
So the two-pot system has been discussed and debated by government and Labour for many, many years. In fact, I've spent a good chunk of my career dealing with what was called retirement fund reform. And the two-pot system is really aimed at giving some liquidity to people's pension funds. Now, the problem with this is that the vast majority of South Africans do not have enough retirement savings already. If they now access this two-pot to reduce their retirement savings, they're effectively mortgaging their future for today. Now, the reality is for many South Africans, they're kind of eagerly awaiting the arrival of the two-pot, which is triggered for September this year. And the funds are going to be a maximum of 30,000 rands or 10% of your fund. So the 10% of your fund with a maximum of 30,000, which is, for many South Africans, because they already don't have enough retirement savings, is not going to be a lot of money. What worries me is that a lot of South Africans will take that money and use it to pay into their debts, okay, because they're feeling pressured from their debts. Now, if I was to advise somebody or to advise you, if you came to me and said, Mr. O'Brien, should I put 30,000 into my debts or should I leave it in my pension fund? I will tell you to leave it in your pension fund and consider alternatives like either talking to your credit providers or using debt counselling as a method to ease the pressure and burden of your debts. Because if you take that 30,000 out of your pension fund, the first thing is the tax man is going to take a slice, so people don't understand that. And effectively, you're taking that 30,000 away from your future. So taking it out of the stock market, etc. So it's available and accessible, but it's not really recommended.
So with that, you would advise someone that would love to withdraw their retirements, would you advise against it in order to pay off their debts?
Absolutely. I think customers should think about other alternatives to deal with excessive debts and not think about accessing their retirement fund. In our experience, where people do take 30,000 rands and settle a couple of their loans to get less debt, within a year or two, they've taken up those loans again and they're back where they started, but now they don't have their pension fund. So it's not a great use of the cash today. Going forward as well, the government is changing the way that you save. So every month you pay into your pension fund, some of your money will go into the savings pot and some will go into the long-term pot. And the savings pot will be accessible a number of times a year, but will always be taxed. And again, you're just mortgaging your future away.
So as of recent, FNB has conducted a survey that 89% of South Africans live beyond their means when it comes to retirement, and they do not understand. What would you say is some of the important things when it comes to retirement funds and savings?
So the problem for humans is that we generally think short term. If you think about your life today and you look back 6 years and think where you were then, would you have seen yourself sitting in a chair today chatting to me? Probably not. Now, you're quite a young guy, you're younger than me, you've got a lot less grey hair, in fact you've got more hair full stop. You're going to be looking at your retirement, let's say 30, 40 years away. It's very difficult for you to think about that today, okay? So saving money for the future is already very difficult for the average person. It doesn't come naturally. And then there's the cost of living, and I want to go on holiday, I want to have a party with my friends. So spending money is much easier than saving money. And that is a massive problem in personal finance globally, not just in South Africa. So for me, when I talk to customers, it's about understanding that the first thing you should do when you get paid is to put money into a savings account, all right? And that can come in different forms. So the major savings need that most South Africans need is emergency savings, okay? And actually Meerkat has an emergency savings product specifically designed for that. The idea there is it helps you deal with emergencies. And if you have a savings pot to deal with an emergency, you don't have to take out a loan, you don't have to go to a machinisa, you can actually deal with the emergency right away. That means you're able to save and live a better life going forward, which means in time you can allocate more to retirement savings. Many South Africans get a pension fund with their employers. Historically, when they changed jobs, they cashed in their pension fund and they spent it on debt or buying a new car or whatever, but they don't realize that they're mortgaging their future. So actually having a savings pot, building it up through your working career and not touching it is the best thing South Africans can do.
I would love to know, what would you encourage someone that is nearing their 50s or that is almost close to retirement age that would like to tap into their retirement savings in order to sustain themselves financially? How would you advise a person like that?
So that's a great question, Jonathan. Thank you. So I am actually a qualified actuary, and actuaries spend a lot of time working in the pension funds and investment arenas, which I've worked in during my career. As you approach your 50s, you need to be getting retirement ready. What's going to happen when you retire? And part of that is what will you do to fill your day, hobbies, etc. But a part of that is also the money. When the actuaries invented pension funding, if you will, and the percentage that you take away from your salary every month, they didn't believe that people would still have debt in retirement. So the pension fund assumes you have no debt. Now, what we're seeing as a business is that many of our customers are in their 60s and 70s and still have debt. So they're really struggling because the pension fund can only cover their bare living expenses, but now they have to pay debts. So what I advise customers in your 50s is to look very strongly at your debts and try and be debt-free before you retire. And you can consider debt counselling as an avenue because many middle-class South Africans are over-indebted. If you take on debt counselling in your 50s, by the time you get to 57, 58, you're going to be debt-free and your pension fund will be ready for your retirement. The idea of being retirement ready, getting yourself debt-free, obviously you can't touch your pension fund, don't withdraw it. As you say, if you change jobs, leave the fund there, always preserve, and look to maximize what you have in that pot so that you can have some kind of a decent retirement. But this idea of clearing the decks of your debt in your 50s, I think is a fantastic piece of advice that people should take on board.
100%. With that being said, there is also those that we can really see that is trying their best to minimize some of their lifestyle changes or lifestyle habits, as well as to cut down on some budgets, but however they still need to tap into that retirement savings. Would you advise that is a good idea in order to pay off debts?
Again, no, because what you're doing is you're mortgaging your future, and particularly if you're an older person, that future is very close. If somebody is feeling the pressure today from living expenses, the cost of food, the cost of petrol, recent interest rate increases, chances are they may be over-indebted. Now, if you qualify and you are over-indebted, debt counselling is a fantastic way to effectively take a breather from your debts and get out of debt without touching your retirement savings. So we often have many older consumers who come to us saying, I'm going to cash in my pension fund to settle my debts, and the advice is always not. So for an older middle-class consumer who may not even be aware of it, they're hitting their 50s, they've still got a lot of debts, debt counselling is the perfect thing to do to get that debt-free position so that you can then retire comfortably.
Thank you so much. And I'm sure a lot of people is definitely going to look into that and also take your advice very clearly, because what you've explained now to me makes a lot of sense, because I even is now trying to look as to ways as to how I can build the profile regarding retirement. Thank you so much, David. It was very lovely having a conversation with you, and I hope a lot of people is going to learn a lot from this knowledge.
Thank you, Jonathan. Great being here.